Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Grace Connection. Guys, so glad to be a part of your Sunday morning. I pray that you are able to enjoy the warmer weather of summer. Hey, do you know a way to do that is to be a part of a summer parade with Grace Connection? Now, we only have one left, all right? We've already done Wadena, and we've already done Purim. And guys, if there's one place to put our money next year in advertising, it's the Purim Parade because of all of the kids that are in that. My goodness, they came out of the woodwork. They were everywhere. We have one more parade to go, and that's here in New York Mills, and that will be Friday, July 10th at 7:30 in the evening. I'm hoping, guys, we would love to have young representation at this where they see that our church isn't just about people my age, it's about younger families as well. And so if that kind of is you, we would love for you to be able to come and be a part of that parade and walk with us. We hand out candy to kids. We eat some candy as well, so this might be a time for you to, get your sugar high. Hey, the next thing that's coming for summer enjoyment is the Lake Day for Grace Connection. That's for our youth group members. That's going to be Saturday, July 11th. You can start out here at 12:30. Meet at the church at 12:30, and then they're going to transport you to the lake. You'll be there at 1 o'clock. Be there all afternoon. Come back here at 5:30. Enjoy supper together. This is just a way for us to be able to see who is interested in continuing in with our youth group. So this is something you put on your calendar to be a great summer fun day. Last but not least, guys, we're bringing up Eileen Broughton for you to pray for. Eileen had emergency surgery this past week, major surgery, and the recovery looks very lengthy. So remember her and Lyle in your prayers, and if you want to be a part of that meal plan for them, helping them out with meals, you can talk to Jesse Pinella and get that coordinated. Guys, as always, such a privilege to be a part of the time that you worship the Lord together. Pastor Don, come and lead us in prayer.
Morning, everyone. Actually, for us, it's a Friday afternoon, about 5:38. We've spent the last 8 hours on the road on our trip down here to Cedar Falls, Iowa, where Sherry is from. We're on our way to Illinois to my youngest daughter Hannah's house, where every 4th of July we have a big family gathering, family reunion of types. For whatever reason, they call it Palooza, and I'm hoping that doesn't mean anything bad. In any case, we'll be going on to there tomorrow afternoon. Then on Sunday, we plan on stopping and going to church at the church we started in Caneville, Illinois, which ironically is called Grace Fellowship. So we're looking forward to that. We'll see a number of our brothers and sisters there. I want to say thanks to Chris, who's recording this for me. Her and her husband Delbert pastor the Evansdale Hope Church. Great group of people over there, and we've really enjoyed visiting them as well. Anyway, we picked this spot because this is a very meaningful place for us. It kind of fits with Isaiah 51. I was reminded when we had our baptismal service a couple of weeks ago of Jeff's comments with regards to Bryce and Brinley being baptized, father and daughter, and it immediately reminded me of Isaiah 51. What an incredible heritage that is for that young girl. I think of her grandparents as well. What a wonderful thing. And the nation of Israel had a great heritage, and unfortunately, they chose not to follow the ways of the Lord. And I often think about that. You can grow up in a Christian home, have all advantages of being in a Christian home, and still choose not to follow the Lord. And that's where Israel found themselves in Isaiah 51. That's because they had been taken into captivity by Babylon. Assyria had already overrun Israel, or the north kingdom, but Judah was taken over in 605, 586 by Babylon. And the people were taken captive, many of them the best and the brightest, taken back to Babylon. And so Isaiah is writing to those that have been taken away from Israel or Judah and have ended up in Babylon. And he writes, a call to trust the Lord. Listen to me, all you who hope for deliverance, all who seek the Lord. Consider the rock from which you were cut, the quarry from which you were mined. Yes, think about Abraham, your ancestor, and Sarah, who gave birth to your nation. Abraham was only one man when I called him, but when I blessed him, he became a great nation. You remember the promise to Abraham was threefold. He said, I'm going to make of you a great nation, I'm going to give you a land, and from you all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Well, the nation of Israel at this time was still awaiting the Messiah, but God had given them a land, and they lost it. God had given them a great nation, and they were in captivity. You know, somebody said once that when you cannot see the hand of God, trust his heart. And Isaiah was reminding them that God could still be trusted, that it was not too late to turn back to him. If you think about it, Daniel was there, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were there. There were godly people there. There were people who hadn't turned their back on God, but their land was occupied. Their temple was destroyed. And their lives have been changed dramatically. And yet, they served the Lord and trusted him. Listen, you all have a great Sunday morning. We look forward to seeing you when we get back. And may the God of all comfort manifest his grace to you in an incredibly powerful way this morning. Lord bless you. We'll see you later.
Have your Bibles, you're going to Psalm 73. Psalm 73. And this morning I want to talk about the goodness I could not see. This is kind of a panorama of Asaph's life, kind of in modern terms. Asaph is an Old Testament priest in the Levite order. Asaph was very close as far as being a trusted servant of David. Now, when we think of Levitical priests, we think of an Old Testament priest, we think of somebody who, they're this righteous man, and, I don't know what your image is of an Old Testament priest, but Old Testament priests did not go around doing this all day, right? First of all, there was no cross in the picture yet. Second of all, the idea of what we think of today of priests, and obviously once a year the high priest would wear a priestly garment, but throughout most of the year, the rest of the year, do you know what the temple looked like on an average Sabbath day? It looked more like a livestock yard than it did a church. Okay, because a little bit, that one really, I just jumped over that hurdle and tripped. A Levitical priest was someone who was making certain when you brought your lamb in for slaughter, or your bull or whatever, that it was a good enough. It's like looking at, hey, I would like to trade this in. Well, let one of my dealers come out and take a look at your car and see how good it is, because we're not bringing it in if it's not good enough. So one of the priests would come out and inspect the animal. And if the animal was found to be good enough, then what happened to the animal? Somebody had to slaughter this thing. And this was going on all day long. So when you look at Old Testament priesthood, think slaughterhouse, not church setting. Okay? Very different. Anyway, Asaph's one of these guys who is part of the priestly system. One of his roles, or I should say not one of, his specific role in history was to record God's words in song. Asaph was one of the lead worship directors for the nation of Israel. Now, I don't know what that looked like, okay? I know it didn't look like what we have today in church setting, right? It's not a on-the-stage type of thing. It seemed to be where Asaph would put to music and to words, recording what God has done in a way that becomes memorable to the people. Anyway, jumping forward to this psalm, Asaph's going to have a crisis of faith. He's a very godly man. He is a very strong leader. He has followed God throughout his whole life. And Asaph comes to this point where he looks and says, essentially, and you'll follow along momentarily, Asaph comes along and says, what's the point? All right? So, let's begin. I want you to see, or begin to see if you can, the goodness that Asaph could not see in the beginning, but eventually does. All right. He starts off by saying, surely God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. Starts off pretty good, doesn't he? God's good to Israel. God's good to the nation that he has chosen, his children. But as for me, my feet almost slipped. I had nearly lost my foothold. For I envied the arrogant and saw the prosperity of the wicked. This is pretty interesting already. We're 3 verses in. And Asaph, who is a priest, who is the national leader for worship in Israel, says this: I looked out, I saw the world keeps getting better and better, richer and richer, and here we are continuing to do the things of God that we're supposed to do, and things don't get any better for us. And so much so that look at verse 3, what's he say? For I envied the arrogant. So in comparison, things look so good on the outside that Asaph is saying, hey, wait a minute. How is it that they get all that good stuff? How is it that these people keep prospering? Listen, God, I know you're telling us we're doing the right thing, but this doesn't make a lot of sense. I keep doing what you're telling us to do, which is the right thing, and they keep getting ahead. And Asaph says, my feet slipped. I started believing the very thing that I was preaching. And that is that it seems like God's people are getting nowhere while the rest of the world keeps getting ahead. So here's the first principle. Asaph struggles when conviction collides with crisis. Asaph struggles when conviction, what he holds to be true, what he knows beyond a shadow of a doubt is true, when that hits or collides with a crisis in his life, he suddenly says, Lord, things aren't adding up. And I want to know why. Okay, it is one thing to hold or to understand. If I asked you this morning, I'm guessing if I sat down with you privately in my office and said to you or asked you, can you explain to me the doctrine of the resurrection? Most of you could probably put it in pretty good terms. Well, Jesus rose from the dead. Yeah, how did Jesus rise from the dead? Well, power of God in him brought him back to life because he was the sinless being. Yep, you got it. Yep. And that one day, and okay, can you talk to me about the concept of not only the resurrection, but his assumption into heaven, his being taken up into heaven? Yeah, and what are we expecting? Well, we're expecting him to return one of these days, right? Okay, so there's life after death. You get that. You understand that. You can talk about the doctrine of the justification by faith. You can make all that happen. And then guess what? You can lose somebody in your life, and you can then ask that question, now wait a minute. I can explain the doctrine really well. I know what I believe. But I just lost somebody. Does the doctrine give you comfort in the moment of your crisis? Asaph says, I'm having a hard time with this. God, I know that you say that in the end we come out ahead, because not as though we're going to let them, you're not going to get to heaven and be looking over at those in hell going, ha, ha, ha. It's not like that, all right? I was right, you were wrong, though I know that's how some of you want it to be, right? Some of you picture heaven this way. You're going to get to heaven, and you're going to be seated on the side of God, looking out at everybody else, and you're going to be going, see, I was right. That's not heaven. Do you know what we're all going to be doing on the day when we get taken to heaven? We're all going to be breaking down to our knees, recognizing that none of us had it all right. And Asaph is saying, Lord, I'm really having a hard time here because what I hold to be true doesn't seem to be panning out in the midst of what I'm experiencing. Doctrines are wonderful and easy to hold and easy to preach if I learn them in Sunday school, I grow up to be an adult, I'm never challenged, I grow old, I die in my sleep, I wake up in heaven. Then doctrines are easy. It's the bumps in between that challenge the doctrines. Do I believe this? Just because I state it doesn't mean I believe it. Do you know the difference between a belief and a value? Yes, a belief is something you hold to be true. A value is a truth you are unwilling to compromise. A lot of us hold something that we believe, right? We believe it to be true, but we will not, or we allow it to be compromised in our life when it's challenged because it's not a value. There's a difference between believing that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and valuing Him as the Son of God. The value is an uncompromised belief that I hold to be true. A belief, I just hold it to be true, doesn't matter. See, it's one thing to believe a doctrine, it's another thing to live through the circumstances that seems to deny it. And Asaph is living through the circumstances where he looks and God keeps telling him to do the godly thing, and Asaph says, yes, but Lord, the world seems to keep getting better and better. They're the ones with the power. They're the ones with the money. They're the ones with the comfort. They're the ones who never get sick. They're the ones who keep going on. And here we are, your people, suffering for it. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Even a parent hopes that trust will bridge the gap between immediate pain and eventual understanding, right? Does that make sense to you? A parent hopes that trust will bridge the gap between immediate pain and eventual understanding. You tell a child no, or that child gets hurt, and you tell them that in the moment, it's worth it. They don't believe you. Matter of fact, they think in that moment something's wrong with you. That's where they grow up in that period of time, that age in between, childhood and adulthood, where they think that you aren't all that bright. And eventually understanding hits. And that day comes where they say, Mom, Dad, you're not as dumb as I thought you were. But until then, you hope that trust bridges that gap. Let me explain it like this. And I know that I'm going to get to it here in a little bit. I'll leave that for number 3 because it makes more sense. All right, number 2. Let's go on. For I envied the arrogant, I saw the prosperity of the wicked. They have no struggles. Look, their bodies are healthy and strong. Now we're picking up where we left off. They are free from common human burdens. They are not plagued by human ills. Therefore, pride is their necklace. They clothe themselves with violence, and from their callous hearts comes iniquity. Their evil imaginations have no limits. They scoff and they speak with malice. With arrogance they threaten oppression. Their mouths lay claim to heaven, and their tongues take possession of the earth. Therefore their people turn to them and drink up waters in abundance. Now think about that for just a minute. Okay? Therefore, their people turn to them and drink up waters in abundance. It is amazing to me how much of a challenge it is I don't mean to step on anybody's toes here, but I'm going to say what I'm going to say, okay? I'm not picking on anybody because I engage in this too. It is amazing to me how difficult it is to get people to make the worship of God a regular practice in their life. But you will watch people color their bodies for football games. You will watch people wear memorabilia of their favorite sports team. I've done that. You will fly a flag outside of your home of your favorite football or basketball team. I mean, I grew up in Indiana, for crying out loud. If you didn't have an IU flag out, and Asaph says, man, it's hard to get people, and a matter of fact, Asaph's living in a time where David's king, and it's going to just take from David to Solomon, and the kingdom's going to split apart, and I think Asaph can see that. He can see that the people of God are looking at the rest of the world, and they're saying, this doesn't make any sense to me. Asaph has a real hard time saying, okay, I can't get the people of God to worship the way they should, but man, if you have a music concert, they flood the music concert. They say, listen, they say, how would God know? Does the Most High know anything? This is what the wicked are like, always free of care. They go on amassing wealth. Surely in vain, here's the hinge to this whole psalm. Surely in vain I have kept my heart pure and have washed my hands in innocence. He's saying, guys, this doesn't make sense. I'm told to keep doing this because it's the right thing. It doesn't seem right to me at all. All day long I have been afflicted, and every morning brings new punishments. If I had spoken out like that, I would have betrayed your children. When I tried to understand all this, it troubled me deeply. You ever thought about the faith and had it trouble you deeply? Ever thought about what it is that God's asking you to do and it troubled you deeply? Don't give me the cliche Christian answer. No, that never bothers me at all. Listen, the worship leader of Israel is saying, guys, I'm having trouble here. Right? Don't pretend to be the Christian that you aren't. Okay? Be the man or woman that you are and say, you know what? I've been where this guy's been. Matter of fact, maybe today, you're right there. When my heart was grieved and my spirit embittered, I was senseless and ignorant. I was a brute beast before you. Now this is cool when we take this. I'll give you the point, but then we're going to go through this and take a look at how he describes himself. Okay? If I had spoken out like that, I would have betrayed your children. Now, Asaph is saying, guys, all these things that I just described to you, right? All the things that I put down in this psalm about how I look at the rest of the world and they don't have any problems, and it seems like God's people are being persecuted. It seems like we do the right things and never, ever get any return on it. This just seems like it's in vain. He actually acknowledges this. He says, look, if I had spoken out like that, I would have betrayed your children. In other words, Asaph is saying this: guys, there are times where I have internal struggles, things that bother me. But there's a time and a place to talk about those troubles. You would have real difficulty if I stood up here on Sunday morning and told you that I was questioning whether or not God really cared about us. Why would you struggle? Because just like Asaph, who says here, if I would have spoken out like that, those in your family who are listening to what I have to say and are impressionable in their faith, it is possible that I would betray them. And they would start thinking the same way that I'm thinking. Asaph says, we don't do it that way. Right? In other words, the temporary crisis of others does not have to become our permanent theology. Just because we struggle doesn't mean that that's what I believe. Just because I go through moments of doubt doesn't mean that I hold to that as truth. He says, now this is how I felt. Look at verse 17 now. Okay, can you put verse 17 in modern day vernacular? Until I went where? To church, exactly. Yes. Asaph says, this is how I felt until I went to the place where God dwells. Now, I don't believe God dwells in this building. I believe God dwells in our hearts. Okay? And when we come together as the church and we bring ourselves all together in one room, that is why you feel something different. Because now we have the collected presence of God. It doesn't mean that you only have a tenth of Him, and as we bring everybody together, somehow God, makes Himself stronger and stronger. I'm saying that, guys, when we come together, we magnify the presence of God in our lives, and that's a reality that we feel. He says, I felt this way till I entered the sanctuary of God, then I understood their final destiny. Surely you place them on slippery ground and you cast them down to ruin. How suddenly are they destroyed, completely swept away by terrors. They are like a dream when one awakes. When you arise, Lord, you will despise them as fantasies or phantoms. Okay, number 3 is this. The sanctuary did not change reality, it revealed reality. The sanctuary did not change reality, it revealed reality. He even says it here, okay? Have you guys ever had a nightmare? Have you ever woke up in the middle of the night, right? Think about the scariest dream you've ever had. I have some doozies, okay? And you wake up, and your eyes fly open, and your heart is pounding, and your pillow is soaked because you've been sweating so profusely. You're like, ooh, ooh. And then the first thing you think is, well, I don't know what the first thing is you think, but the first thing I do when I wake up from a nightmare like that is I look around the room, right? I am checking. Is what I just saw still here? I might even be brave enough to look underneath my bed to see. The second thing I do after that nightmare and that I'm awake is, I thank God I'm awake. That it's over with. Asaph does the same thing. They are like a dream when one awakes. When you arise, Lord, you will despise them as... I prefer the word phantom here. It's like a ghost, a fantasy, right? The idea that they're not real. And you woke up from the dream. Asaph's saying that's how he felt. He was in this nightmare where he couldn't see things correctly. He couldn't see the goodness of God. And he felt lost. And he says the sanctuary didn't actually change reality, it revealed reality. Last week, we went to Fargo and spent the night there, and we're with Jordan and Christina and the kids, and so we got a hotel to stay in, and the kids came over and we went down to the pool, right? And in the pool is this nice big, it said 20-person hot tub. I would really like to take 20 of us over there and see if it could hold. I don't believe that it can. It said 20-person hot tub, and it had this wading pool, and it had this slide, and this kiddie pool, and all these things. And we go in to the room, and we're goofing off, and Micah has no fear of water, just loves it. And you know how nearly 2-year-olds run, right? And poor Micah, he has my body structure, right? So he has these short little legs and these really long arms. And so when he runs, it just looks funny, And he's just running through the pool area. And he falls on the concrete. And down to his knee he goes. And I can still see this, because you see it, right? The skin's gone. And he's down on the knee. And he looks down, and you know how you kind of want to hold it like this, and he goes down with his hands to grab hold of his knee, and at this point is bleeding. So it's not just a little scratch, it's a good one. And he goes down and he looks back up at the pool and all the water, and he looks up at me, and he gets a smile, and he straightens back up, and he gets up, and he just goes. He's like, "Grandpa, do you not see the reality of the pool and the water? I really don't care about this little cut right now. There are things, the reality is there are lots more fun things to do." And I'm thinking, "But you're bleeding, boy. I don't, other people come in here and use this pool." He didn't care. That's the reality that's revealed for Asaph. Yes, I hurt. Yes, this makes me want to reach down and grab it. But then I got into the sanctuary of God. And guess what? I saw reality from God's perspective. And there was no time for me to look at my wound. Now, I'm not saying that things don't hurt. It still hurt him. He still acknowledged the pain. But there was something greater there than the pain. And that smile came across his face like, "I'm not letting anything stop me from enjoying this." Now that's kind of a cute analogy. Sometimes pain is so real and so overwhelming. And when you can't see it from God's perspective, you're just like Asaph, who grabs hold of what's hurting and says, "I don't know that this is even worth it." Until you reach the sanctuary of God and you can see from His perspective. Now, for those of you who are wondering, right, hey, he has this text box that he hasn't brought up, and it's not on the screen. And you're absolutely right. It's the spiritual autopsy of Asaph. And I'll give you the words so you can fill it in, because I just didn't have it up there. But here's what Asaph goes through. He says that in verse 3, he envied. So Asaph conceived envy which developed into comparison, right? He began to look at himself versus the rest of the world, and he thought to himself, I don't know that this is worth it. They seem to be doing far better than what we do. That comparison gave birth to doubt, confusion, and exhaustion. That's verses 13 through 16. He says, surely in vain I have kept my heart pure and have wasted my hand and washed my hands in innocence. All day long I've been afflicted, and every morning brings new punishment. If I had spoken out like that, if I had spoken what I really thought, it would have been so bad that even your kids wouldn't have believed. They wouldn't have followed God. When I tried to understand all this, it troubled me deeply. That is confusion and exhaustion. Those thoughts sent the roots of bitterness burrowing deeply into his heart until he became emotionally responsive rather than spiritually rational. Do you know what he called himself in the end? I think it's verse 22. Do you know how he said he behaved towards God at the end? Like a brute. He says, God, I'm not even spiritually bringing things through anymore. I am just responding based on how I feel in the moment. And then he says, I get to the sanctuary of God where I can worship the Lord, where I'm used to being. I'm a priest after all, right? So wouldn't you think as a priest that Asaph would have been in the sanctuary of God many times before this? What's this suggest? This suggests that the sanctuary is not a room. It is a place where you meet God. It is a place where you worship. And he says, when I got there, everything fell into place. What we rehearse, we reinforce. What we rehearse, we reinforce. Guys, if we're not in worshiping God on a regular basis, if we don't make that a practice, guarantee you the book of Hebrews says you will drift. You will eventually find yourself way, way out. Have you ever been in the ocean? You ever been on any kind of a raft or a board? I was in San Diego once on a boogie board, coming from the Midwest. I didn't see no current. I just saw waves coming back in. The next thing I know, there is a lifeguard behind me on a jet ski. Sir, this is all the further you are allowed to go out. You need to start heading back now. I didn't know how I got out there. So I start paddling as hard as I can. You drift without even realizing it. So what we rehearse, we reinforce. That's why we come here every week. Yet, I am always with you. You hold me by my right hand. You guide me with your counsel, and afterward you will take me into glory. Please don't tell me that those in the Old Testament did not believe in life after death. They sure did. Whom have I in heaven but you? And earth has nothing I desire besides you. Okay, he's in the sanctuary, he's worshiping God, and here's what happens. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Those who are far from you will perish. You destroy all who are unfaithful to you. But as for me, it is good to be near God. For I have made the sovereign Lord my refuge. I will tell of your deeds. Number 4 is this: the nearness of God always defines what is good. Asaph comes back. He's been watching the world. Matter of fact, he's been studying the world. And he's been comparing it to the church. He's been comparing it to the nation of Israel. And he says, God, I'm just not certain this is even the right thing. And then Asaph gets into this place where he comes back into the worship of God and he gains God's perspective. And he says, whoa, wait a minute. There is something more valuable here than anything the world is experiencing. All of the health they have, all of the wealth they have, all of the luxuries they have, all of the prosperous decisions they make. Asaph says, do you know the one thing that is far better than that, greater than any of that? Being near God. Period. He now will take the presence of God over every one of those things because he has come back into worship, gotten his spiritual mind, spiritual head back in place. He experiences the goodness of God, recognizes God's hand in his. And he says God's nearness is always what defines goodness. Because in the end, the world loses all of that. Worship team, would you come this morning? But as for me, it's good to be near God. I have made the sovereign Lord my refuge. I will tell of your deeds. Asaph used to think God's goodness was found in leading him a certain way. Right? Lord, you're good when you make all these things happen in my life. It's interesting, when things go well, we're able to say that God is good. When things don't go the way that you want them to go, is God still good? Job had the ability at the end of his life to say, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of God. So the thing that changed for Asaph was that God's goodness is not just something that's a reality when things go my way. He says God's goodness is something that I recognize that is when I'm with him. So he concludes that God's goodness is found in being with God all the way along the journey. So you might be that person this morning who's struggling and saying, man, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's fair. It just doesn't seem like it's right. It just doesn't seem like it works out. It seems like if I put this much in, shouldn't I get that much back out of it? And right now I'm putting everything in and I'm getting very little out. The answer to that solution isn't to keep fighting and keep putting in and keep looking for a better result. The answer to that problem is to stop what you're doing, draw near to God. Because when you do that, he says, if you draw near to me, what will I do to you? Draw near to you. And in that moment, we recognize that the best thing possible is God with us along the journey.